Have you ever been invited somewhere where you only knew a couple of people? You tell yourself you're excited, but somewhere in the back of your mind you're also thinking, please let there be someone to sit by. Isn't that funny? We're grown adults. We've paid bills, raised kids, survived family reunions, and we still worry about where we're going to sit. This past weekend, I was invited to spend the day with a group called the River Rats in central Nebraska. I knew a few people, not everybody. It was my good friend Presley's birthday celebration, and so there was a whole group of us that were invited as extended family to the River Rats to go jeeping for the day. It had been a couple years since I had been out there with that group, and it's refreshing because they are always very welcoming, making sure you're comfortable, making sure you have snacks and drinks and a towel to sit on. Everyone just made room, and on the flight home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Today isn't really about a river or jeeps or airplanes. It's about something every one of us has been looking for, whether we admit it or not, a place to belong. Let's get into it.
Hey, Stephie Kay, got something to say. Talk that listens, clears the way. Truth on the mic, grounded in change. You sticking with that? Oh yeah, we sticking with that. Laugh it out, talk it through, we ain't looking back.
Some chats ain't easy, but we take it slow. Tough stuff tackled, now watch us glow.
You sticking with it? Yeah, we sticking with
Hey everybody, welcome back to You Stickin' With That? I'm your host, Stephie Kay, and I am so glad you're here. Whether you're driving down the road, walking the dog, cleaning the house, I'm just happy we're spending a little time together. I just got home from almost 2 weeks back in Nebraska and Minnesota. I saw family, spent time with friends I've known forever, laughed so hard my stomach hurt more than once, and I ate enough homemade scotcheroos that I'm pretty sure my genes filed a formal complaint. If you've never heard of scotcheroos, it's a spin on the Rice Krispie bars, but they have homemade chocolate frosting on top. And I don't know what kind of goodness is in there, but it's almost impossible to eat just one or five. Going home is funny, isn't it? The roads are the same. The grain elevators are still standing like they've been waiting for you. The little towns still smell like summer. You drive by places you haven't thought about in years, and suddenly you're 20 again. Until you get out of the car, and then your knees remind you, nope, you're definitely not 20. I kept looking around thinking, when did everybody get older? And then I caught my reflection in a store window. Mystery solved. Apparently, we all did. One of my favorite parts of going home isn't really the places. It's the people. There are friends I don't talk to every week. Some, not even every month. Life happens, right? Kids grow up, people move, parents get older, calendars get ridiculously full. But then you finally sit down together, and it's like somebody hit pause years ago. You don't have to impress each other. You don't have to explain your life story. You just pick up where you left off. Those friendships are rare. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more I appreciate people who feel like home. One of those friends, Presley, invited me to spend the day with a group called the River Rats. Now, if you're listening somewhere outside Nebraska, you're probably picturing a completely different scene. Maybe a bunch of guys under a bridge catching fish with some homemade fishing poles. No, not even close. The River Rats are a group from Central City who spend time together during the summer. They load up their jeeps and head out on the Platte River for the day. They bring enough food to feed a small army and spend the day just being together. No itinerary, no pressure, just people. And can I tell you something? It's amazing. Then somebody casually said, oh, it's supposed to be 107 degrees today with the humidity. 107. And I thought, oh, so we're vacationing on the surface of the sun. Good to know. Nobody else even reacted. They just kept loading coolers. Meanwhile, I'm calculating if the humidity here feels the same as it does in Florida now, and do we have a portable fan? Which we did. About 10 Jeeps headed out. Coolers, chairs, And because Nebraska has been so dry, the Platte River wasn't exactly showing off. There were stretches where there wasn't much water at all. Sandbars everywhere. Wide open sky, the bridge, the trees. And honestly, it was beautiful. Simple, quiet, nothing fancy. The kind of place that reminds you God doesn't need mountains to make something beautiful. Sometimes he just uses a Nebraska river. Our first stop was under the bridge where there was a little shade. The stops are the best part because you get out of your vehicles, kind of talk with all the people, make some friends, and just be. By the second stop, the food came out. We had brought some tacos for our group from one of the local restaurants. It's called a taco box that you can buy. My friend Presley had pre-wrapped 2 tacos to a tinfoil package. And so you could just kind of grab it and eat it there. People that know me know I love to DJ. And my friend Presley had said, all right, we're sick of our playlists. You're in charge of music. So bring some downloaded stuff because there's no reception out there. I took time and I did all that. I got 8 or 9 playlists downloaded and I was excited. And we had 80s hair bands and I'd snuck in a little country in there because Presley doesn't like country, but sometimes she forgets. So I was all ready to go and so excited. And once we plugged in my phone to the speaker, it kept cutting out, even though I was not even a foot from the speaker itself. Well, in my experience, what happens with that is it's if a second person is also signed into your Bluetooth for the speaker, but we checked everybody. So we're going around finding out who is also signed into the speaker and having everyone turn their Bluetooth off. At the end of the day, it still didn't work, and we had to play their regular playlists, which was fine. And when you're going with the flow on a day like that, it's not that big a deal. It was still amazing. Because it was so stinking hot and there was literally puddles of water instead of an actual river in the river, we headed back to the lake. They have a lily pad there, a giant one, and about 20 people or so can fit around the edge of it and kind of talk. It's almost like a giant floating table in the lake. So we went back and we sat in the water for hours, and I didn't even notice it was hot out. And at the end of the day, they grilled burgers and brats and had salads and dip. We sang happy birthday. There was a cake, and it felt great. One other thing I've learned over the years is somebody's Jeep seems to always break down in the river. This time it was brakes. The brakes were smoking like you wouldn't believe. I've seen the engine trouble, all the stuff, because when you're in the water with a Jeep, you're going to have things happen. But it seems like one of their favorite things to do, everyone comes together under the hood to see what the problem is and get it fixed in the middle of the river. And it's kind of cool to watch. Apparently with brakes that are smoking, you just throw some water on it, let it sit a minute, and drive it back. As we were leaving that day, I wasn't thinking, I wish I owned a Jeep. Well, I sometimes do think that. Or, I wish I lived closer to the river. Well, I sometimes think that too. I was thinking, I wish more people live like this. People who don't need a special occasion to get together. People who make you feel welcome before they even know your last name. People who automatically scoot their chair over and make room for one more. You know, sometimes a moment is so small, you almost don't think about it until days later. That happened on my first flight back to Florida on Monday. I was sitting next to a guy who I could tell English was his second language. We never exchanged names, and we didn't need to. He was kind of one of those people that smiles with their whole face. During the flight, they came around with the beverage cart and the snacks. And you get usually 2 choices, pretzels or cookie. And we left at like 5:30 in the morning. So I had already told myself, you know, the last thing I need is snacks. But nonetheless, I suddenly felt the need to have pretzels. The guy next to me took the pretzels. So I said, well, I'll take some pretzels. She said, I have more up front, but I'll have to go get them. So the nice guy next to me said, you know what? She can have the pretzels. I'll take the cookie instead. And to me, it was just kindness. Later, we both had the Airline app open, and we watched the countdown until we land. And it's kind of cool because you can actually see seconds on it, which is kind of weird. He looked at my connection time and seemed genuinely concerned that I'd make the next flight. And when we got off the plane, I noticed he slowed down a little bit and kind of looked for me, almost like he wanted to make sure I knew where I was going. And of course, he doesn't realize how much I travel and how many predicaments I've gotten myself into and out of. That's a show in itself, actually. When you get to the Skylink, it separates you by gates. And I think he was going to gate D and I was going to gate C. So we split up. And I never saw him again. Never learned his name, but I still remember him. Funny how that works, isn't it? I couldn't tell you what shirt he was wearing. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But I'll never forget the airplane pretzels. Sometimes people don't remember what we say. They remember how we made them feel. That little moment made me think about my Uber days. Some of you know I drove for Uber and Lyft for a time. And if you've ever driven, you know every ride is a mystery. Some people climb in and tell you their entire life story before you leave the parking lot, and others don't say a word. You just never know. So my Nebraska trip concluded with heading to the airport at 3:30 in the morning to head back to Florida. I was staying with my mom, and the last thing I wanted to do was have her get up that early to bring me, so I had reserved an Uber ahead of time. Now, in big cities, wouldn't even think twice about it because there's a lot of options, but this is a smaller town, Nebraska, and I was thinking, do they even have anyone who wakes up that early? And so I allowed a little wiggle room just in case the person didn't show up, but nonetheless, 3:30 in the morning, there was Israel, my driver. And I had ordered the economy ride, as I typically always do, and he showed up in a big SUV with leather seats, spotless, and I was like, did I sign up for the VIP package here and not know it? He didn't say much. You know, it was early. He's probably half awake, but he was kind enough to show me where the temperature knobs were in the car so I could adjust that, and off we went. And I was so grateful that Israel showed up, and little did he know he was the last part of my adventure. Nothing dramatic happened. He didn't change my life. He just made the 14 hours of traveling I had coming up start on a great note. And isn't that enough sometimes? We spend so much time wondering if we're making a difference. Maybe making somebody's day just 5% easier is making a difference. Now, I wish the story ended with me walking into my cool apartment, taking a shower, crawling into bed. It did not. I opened the door, and it felt exactly like Florida, inside. My air conditioner had quit. A few years ago, I probably would have had a full conversation with the thermostat. Like, oh, really? You picked today? Seriously? Instead, I surprised myself. I filled out a maintenance request, opened the windows, turned on some fans, went to the gym, grabbed some dinner, and I figured, being upset wasn't going to make it any cooler. I was proud of myself, actually. Now, sleeping that night, let's just say I wasn't tucked into bed. I was gently simmering. It felt like a sauna. But the good news is I figured I might have lost 5 pounds in sweat. So that was cool. By yesterday afternoon, maintenance had already fixed everything. And it reminded me, not every inconvenience deserves center stage. Sometimes life just shrugs and says, this one's temporary. But that night when I got back and I'm thinking, I can't just sit in here for hours, right? I headed to the beach because after almost 2 weeks away, there's just something about putting your feet back in the Florida sand. I grabbed dinner overlooking the Gulf. The sky was cloudy, and it seemed like it was going to be one of those no sunset sunsets where it's just basically clouds. It's a nothing burger. You don't even see the sun at all because the clouds are so low. Much to my surprise and amazement, there was this moment in time where this red-orange ball just appeared in between the cloud sections, and it was spectacular. People had stopped eating, and everyone was grabbing their phones, and really, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. And I thought, some of life's best moments don't last very long. And that's probably part of what makes them so beautiful. And while I was sitting there, there was a guy a couple seats away who struck up a conversation. Now, if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you already know I love to meet people, and I talk to everybody that I can. And some of the conversations are so outrageous, I just really never know what I'm getting into. But anyway, we started chatting. I asked him if he was a local or if he was on vacation, the normal stuff. At one point, I asked him what he did for work, and he said he was in safety. He's like, I don't want to talk about work right now. And I thought, all right, fair enough. Somebody hates their job. A little later, he mentioned he was writing songs, and he showed me some of the lyrics that he's currently working on. You could feel every ounce of emotion in it. Eventually, he shared that he had loved someone from Albania. I've never known anyone from Albania. I don't even know what you do in Albania. But the relationship had ended, so he was writing a song. And again, he said, I don't really want to talk about it. And you know what? I respected that because it reminded me of something. Every single person we meet has chapters they aren't ready to read out loud. Some people are carrying heartbreak. Some are carrying grief. Some disappointment or regret. Some are simply doing the best they can to get through Tuesday. We have no idea what happened before we cross paths with them. And maybe that's why kindness matters so much. Not because everybody needs advice. Most of the time, they don't. But they just need someone to sit beside them for a little while. No fixing or judging, just being there. And as I drove home, I started replaying my whole trip. The river rats, the man with the pretzels, Israel, the songwriter. None of those people knew each other. Different ages and backgrounds and lives. But every one of them gave me exactly the same gift. They made room for somebody else. And that's when this whole idea of leave an empty chair really started making sense. Each of these stories on their own weren't the story I was trying to tell. The story is what they all have in common. People who had no idea they were making a difference. And isn't that how it works? The biggest impacts in our life rarely come from the biggest moments. They come from the ordinary ones. I started thinking about being a kid. Remember how easy it was? You just start playing. There's no background check or 5-week scheduling process. And then somewhere along the way, we grew up. And now we say things like, we should get together sometime, which translated into adult language seems to mean, I'll see you in November or next year. Seriously, trying to get 4 adults together is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. One person's traveling, one person has grandkids, one has pickleball, and before you know it, 3 months have gone by. I don't think we've forgotten how to make friends. I think we've forgotten to make room. And wouldn't it be cool if every neighborhood cookout had room for one more? Or what if every church or every workplace or friend group or dinner table had somebody whose job was simply to notice the person standing alone? Can you imagine how different this world would feel? At the end of the day, I think we're all trying to find our people, find a place where we belong every time we show up there. I, for one, am going to do more of looking around and seeing if anyone feels left out. You know, God has a habit of teaching us big lessons through little moments, if we're willing to notice them. There was one more part of the trip I haven't told you about yet. Every time I go to Nebraska, I get to see my dogs. And honestly, that's one of the biggest highlights of the whole trip. Their names are Duke, Indy, which is short for Indiana Jones, and Apollo. 3 labs. 1 black, 1 yellow, 1 chocolate. Basically, if there were an Olympic event for shedding hair, they'd sweep the podium. People don't talk very much about this part of divorce. We talk about the house, the finances, the holidays, sharing the kids, but nobody really talks about the things you have to leave behind. Sometimes that's pets. I made a decision years ago that still hurts every single time I leave. As much as I wanted my dogs with me, I knew they already had the best life. They have a farm, wide open fields, a doggy door, room to run, places to swim, places to chase rabbits, or at least convince themselves they almost caught one. If I brought them to Florida, they'd be in an upstairs apartment waiting for me to get home, going outside on my schedule instead of theirs. That would have been better for me, but not for them. And love isn't always about what makes us happiest. Sometimes it's about doing what's best for someone else, even when it hurts. They're incredibly loved and cared for by my ex-husband and his girlfriend. And really, I couldn't ask for better people to love them. And that gives me a lot of peace. It doesn't make saying goodbye any easier. Every day I was back in Nebraska, I take them for either a long walk in the fields or we go swimming at the family lake, watching them in the water, chasing balls. There's just nothing better. And these moments fill my cup. And then the trip ends. I hug them, I scratch their ears, and I tell them, Mama loves you. I'll see you soon. Now Duke's getting older. He's the oldest. He just turned 10. So every goodbye feels a little more important than the last one. And every time I drive away, I cry. And then I remind myself of something. I'm so grateful because as hard as this is, I don't have to coordinate weekends. I don't have to meet in parking lots. I don't have to count the days until it's my turn. Years ago when my nephew was little, we were there on Sundays to supervise the handoffs to make the custody exchange a little easier for everybody involved. Watching that left such an impression on me. It gave me such compassion for parents who have to hug their children goodbye every week or every other week, knowing they'll miss birthdays, bedtime stories, soccer games, or just an ordinary Tuesday. So compared to that, my heartache over my dogs is small, but it reminds me of something. Real love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's having the strength to let go, because it's what's best for someone you love. And maybe that's one more way we leave an empty chair. For my Stephie Kay thought of the day, I have this. Yesterday, when I got to the gym, I got out of the car, locked it, and there was that extra beep. And if you have a newer car, what that typically means, or what it does mean, is that you've left your key in the car. And so it knows not to lock. You're supposed to go back and get your key. So I thought, well, how did I do that? So I went back, made sure it was in my pocket, which it was, looked around, couldn't find it. Closed the door, it did it again. And I thought, okay, I have 2 fob keys, so the second one is obviously in there somewhere down in a seat. But I was running late, so I thought I'll deal with this later. Fast forward, and there's a drawer in my apartment where I keep the second fob key. And I go to check, and there it is, in the drawer, right where it's supposed to be. The second key was never in the car. So why did it beep? I still have absolutely no idea. I could say someone's messing with me, but that doesn't make any sense. Who would it be? I have absolutely no idea. Somewhere out there, my little car knows something it's not telling me. But here's what struck me. The mystery wasn't in the beep. The mystery was how fast I created the story. I never stopped to think, well, maybe the car is glitching. I immediately thought, well, the second fob has to be stuck in there somewhere. I never thought maybe something electronic is happening, right? I heard the beeps, and it wouldn't lock. So in my mind, within seconds, I had solved the case that the key was in there. But I hadn't, because the key was in the drawer at home. So I wonder, how often do we do that with people? Someone who doesn't text us back. Maybe they're mad at us. Someone who walks past us without saying hi. They must not like me. We don't get invited somewhere. But maybe, just maybe, their phone died. Maybe they never saw you because they were so focused on a situation that was going on in their life. The truth is, most of the stories we tell ourselves are written with missing pages. And if we're not careful, we start treating our assumptions like facts. So here's my challenge this week. The next time your mind starts writing a story, pause. Ask yourself, do I know this, or am I just filling in the blanks? Because sometimes the loudest story in our head isn't the truest one. And for the record, if anybody knows why my car would beep when there was no key in it, I'd still like an explanation. It's been living rent-free in my head ever since. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. I never take your time or friendship for granted. If today's episode reminded you of someone, would you share it with them? You can find You Stickin' With That on all major social media platforms. Reminder that new episodes drop every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And before I go, I want to leave you with one last thought. The next time you're with a group of people, look around. There might be someone standing there wondering if they belong. Scoot your chair over, smile, wave them in, because you never know, the person sitting in that empty chair today might become one of the greatest blessings in your life tomorrow. I love you guys. See you next Wednesday.